That's where I moved in from when I came from St. Joseph's Hospital, Nogales. I lived in the house where Ann Mahalik lives now. That was the second house that my dad built, and the third house is the house that I own now on Armstrong Road. But when he was we were living in the house in the canyon. My dad wanted to raise a pig, and the town council said no, it's against the town ordinance. And so my dad got mad, and he happened to find 6 acres up on Harshaw Road, and that's where he built his third house. But that's a little bit of the story of my dad and
did you have a pig?
and we had a pig. And my aunt used to work at a restaurant where the Gathering Grounds is now, and we used to get all the slop from that restaurant and every day. So then, but I don't remember us slaughtering the pig, but I know we had a pig. But I do remember slaughtering the calf. We also had dairy cow there, and we also would slaughter the calf every year.
Did she work at Mom's restaurant? Yeah.
No, it was a different restaurant. It was a Mexican restaurant.
Oh.
Just this way, this side of the fountain. So I don't remember what it was called, but Mariana was.
It was Holbrook's Country.
Mariana used to work there. Something somewhere in that area. Right.
That was my question.
Mariana, as I mentioned, my grandmother Chica had 4 children from her first husband, so Mariana was the 4th child. It was Amelia, Emilio, Efren, and Mariana. And then she was my dad's half-sister. But we also called her Nana.
I remember her.
Right.
Is the cave still there?
Murphy, is the cave still there? Anyway, there was, when growing up, I was friends with Nacho Arias and his brother George and Juan, and they lived in those apartments. We did have a little, he was good at engineering, and he built a little clubhouse there in that cave. So I'm not sure, Murphy might have already covered it up, but anyway, there was a little indentation there. It didn't go far into the hill, but that's where my grandmother
So
lived.
it may possibly still be.
Possibly still there. Right.
It wasn't the cave that was the second jail in town.
No.
Was it?
That cave is
Okay.
in the other canyon.
Okay. There was a lot of cave stuff going on.
But originally, they didn't even do that. When they got in trouble, there was a big oak tree across from the big steer bar.
That was the first one, right?
They would just chain them up.
The jail tree,
The
right?
jail tree was the first.
And one of the ones that chained up all the time was Caroca. Joaquin Caroca.
Gilbert's dad.
It's Gilbert's dad and all of them.
Don't talk about my grandfather. Don't talk about my grandfather.
He was there a lot. I have a couple of all the docket books from Crichton, because I used to be the judge here. And there's all kinds, there's 2 docket books. There's a civil and there's for disputes. And there's a lot of people in Patagonia are in that book. This was a very colorful town. Before all this, in the old time, it was very colorful.
Well, that's what I was thinking. We talk about dancing so much. One of the displays we have up at the museum is of the bars. And between 1900 and 1910, there were 7 or 8 bars on McEwen. I mean, Grand Chicken Railroad town, right? So.
Well, then another story, I'll tell this story is with the Wagon Wheel Bar. What happened originally is Hugh Shoemaker lived where Molly lives now. They were staying there, and a couple of cowboys knocked on the door one night and said, "Hey, I understand you want to start a bar." And he said, "Yeah, but I don't have any money." He had worked at the Empire Ranch and he was kind of messed up. And so they said, "Well, how much would it cost to get a bar started?" He said, "If I have $1,000, I could rent a Perfectionist, the ice cream place, which was on this corner where the gas station is now. If I could get that going." Well, the 2 cowboys lent him the money, and I never heard this story until Steve Cervantes told me. His grandmother told him the story. There was 2 guys that lent him the money, Ray Bergier and Joe King. And that's how it all got started.
So what year was that?
It's probably, I don't know what year the Wagon Wheel Bar started. They had, the other thing they had, they all, there was my dad and Harold Squires' dad, Cy Squires, and Hugh Shoemake wanted to have this big party or big roping or rent, and they had the Little Madison Square Garden, which is all of Joe Hill's Trailer Park or Charlie's Trailer
It's
Park.
where the mine trucks.
And
park
they called it the Little Madison Square Garden. They all had, the only one that made any money out of it was Hugh Shoemake selling beer, but there's pictures in the store and there's pictures at the museum of that. It's called Little Madison Square Garden, Pasadena.
Thank you.
Yeah, I share that every once in a while with the Little Square Garden. That's where that Falco field was for Blaine Lewis's horses there too, in that same spot.
Right, yeah, that was it. But it was a real cowboy.
In later years there, in that field you're talking about, where Blaine had colts and whatnot, when our kids were growing up and going to school, we kept them busy every minute. They weren't on cell phones or TVs or in the house. We had the farms leased out there from old Dick Ensign, and it was where the native seed place is nowadays. And every day after school and every weekend and every summer, they were out there planting corn or hay. And we also had what we called the Harshaw field, which is the one that's all flattened out now. And I heard rumors it was going to be made into some kind of parking lot for the mine.
No, that's affordable
But-
housing. that's
But
going in.
hopefully it won't be. But
No, it's not.
I believe in my raising kids, that was a big benefit, even though they complained all the time. But now they are thanking me that we put them to work. Slave drivers, they used to call us. And our middle son, he said, I'm not working out in the field anymore. After I graduate, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get a job and work from 8 to 4. And so he put himself through the U of A and he worked for United Health on a computer nowadays. And he just retired and he's on the road traveling now. So it's a good thing, I believe. And it's the way I was raised, not dependent on mechanical things or technology, but I know it's part of the new generation, and I am very sad to see paper and pencil leave the country, because it was, in my school days, it was so important to be able to print and write a story with a pencil or cursive to write your name. I mean, everybody's name now, you can't make out one single letter of it.
They're
So it's
actually
just a
teaching
scribble.
cursive again.
Pardon me?
They are teaching cursive again.
Oh, good, that's good. See, I'm out of the
Not
loop.
in, you know. There are people who agree with me.
Yeah,
Now they can read the Constitution.
there you go.
Speaking of technology, I'll tell another little story.
You want this? So
No,
folks can
I'm
hear?
loud enough, you can hear
You
me.
want to stand up so we can see?
The first television Patagonia ever had,
Yep.
my dad had.
Right.
And that television now, if you want to see it, is in the museum. I gave it to the museum. It was the first television Patagonia had. There was a guy in Tucson by the name of Chub Racer. We had a couple little antennas. Vision wasn't very good, but they all like to watch the fights and stuff. And who
Friday night
came to
fights.
watch the fights all the time was Jack Sullivan and my dad, but the whole community came. I can remember in the evening,
Mother and
there
Daddy
would
had the
be
third
people
one in
sitting
town.
all over the floor. Everybody just got to come in.
Yeah.
But if you want to see that TV, it is in the museum up
And I think when Bill gave us that to the museum, he said on Friday nights when they were watching the fights, there was betting going on. But Jack Sullivan, who was a cop, was there, so they didn't get in trouble.
No, he was betting too.
We have a question back there?
What was the building across the street? It's a long,
There's the
What
Lopez
was that?
Pool Hall and Lopez Apartments. And then there's the Duquesne house, is that,
There were apartments and what else?
well, there was a pool hall
Oh,
originally, and then they added the apartments later on. And
Are
then
there any plans to develop that into,
it's so privately owned. At one time, the museum was considering, we were negotiating with the owner to have the museum there, but that deal fell through. Now we're up at the schoolhouse, which is even better.
But that whole building, that Lopez Pool Hall is full of treasures.
Yeah. Doug
Still.
Famer was a collector, so if you want to read Doug Famer's story, I think it's the Memory Project, State of Arizona Library, it's well documented. He was our best interviewee. He definitely had a lot of information, so good stories.
There's a lot of rattlesnakes in there too.
Could be.
You can see them coming out during the day. Armand, do you know, somebody came in here one day and said that this big mesquite tree out here was called the shaming tree. Do you know anything about that? Does anybody know?
I'd have to ask Cindy and Emma maybe, or
I was
Shady Tree.
never shamed there.
She was Saint Cynthia, right?
There was a lot of shaming, but not to the tree.
No, they said that if somebody did something bad, they were tied to the tree and the town would come and say, bad, you're bad, shame on you. I don't know if that's just a myth, but this guy said, oh, absolutely, my dad was tied to that tree, and so I've been curious about it ever since.
Well, there were jail trees there. There were a couple, like I said, Bill
Yeah.
mentioned that.
That one.
There was one next to what was the Texaco station.
Yeah.
And that's the one that Doug Famer rescued, and it's up at the museum now.
Yeah.
That's the jail tree stump. And then I believe there was another one, according to a book that you have here at the library, over by Jack Heiss's house.
That's
the big
right.
mesquite tree there.
Yes.
And that they have also been used as a jail tree. I mean, it's basically real easy. You just need some chains and a shackle, and you can pick any tree
That's right.
and chain you.
I think that was related to the bars that were on the
And then you can shame them also. Yeah.
Or you can also continue the party after the martial
That's
round,
right, that's
too, with
right.
your buddies,
Great.
While you're chained?
while you're chained.
I see.
I heard somebody tell a story about a mother whose son was chained to one of the jail trees, and she broke him out and took him home, and then he got chained up later for longer, and the police kept her away from him. So there was a lot of that strong paternal thing going on.
And,
I have
yes,
a random question. You mentioned the memory project,
yes,
and I've gone on there and I've seen there's like about 6 oral histories.
yes, correct.
Are there plans to continue that in the community? I know that you have done a lot of work with that, so I don't know if it's.
There's probably no reason why we couldn't. We basically have to submit them in the format that they want, and maybe even this can go into it at some point, but I guess it's just a matter of getting it in the format they'll accept, and then they could also be there for, for a long time. Anything else?
Emma, you should tell the story about Miss Till in Harshaw, our teacher.
Miss Till in Harshaw. Yeah,
And
that's
Mrs.
what-
Locksher, she was your teacher.
1956. Yeah, 1956, Harshaw School, first grade. Our teacher was Anna Lobsher. Anna Lobsher. She was a real tall, thin, light-haired lady. Very, very old, I thought. She probably was. But she had this thing that she wanted all of us to be able to write in cursive. That was her main thing. And guess what? We did. Just about everybody that came out of that school, the Harshaw School, would write in cursive. And even now, when I look at my writing and I look at Irma Mahalka's writing, Irma Sang, we write the same way. We have the same writing. And so does Cindy and all of us that were there. And then later on, we had a teacher that came to us from Gallup, New Mexico, Lillian Till. She was a very short lady, kind of plump, very, very pleasant. And she brought back with her several art pieces where she taught at the Indian Reservation in Gallup. And I was just fascinated so much by those, the artwork. I would spend hours just looking at it and trying to replicate it as much as I could. And the story about the, oh yeah, we had this big heater in one of the rooms, one of the great rooms of that little school. It was 2 rooms, with a 2-room schoolhouse in Harshaw. And it had like a metal cover over it. It had little round holes, little tiny little round holes where all of the heat would dispense from, so that we were always warm. One day I discovered that a piece of chalk was the perfect size to put into the little holes of the, and I created the most beautiful design. It had arms, and it had arms here, and it had legs. And I was so proud of it. It looked beautiful until Miss Till saw it. She gave me 2 whacks to the hand with double rulers. Do you guys remember the double rulers? I don't know why. Not single rulers, but double rulers. She whacked me twice, and that was my punishment, along with having to apologize to everybody to what I had done. And then I had to clean it all up. That was something else. And so,
And the military songs we had to march to.
oh yes, on Thursdays, we had music in the afternoon, and we would have Mrs. Hale, who lived just right next door to the school. She would come down and she would play the piano, and the piano is up at the museum right now. That's where it is now. She would come and play the piano, and she would always have the students select what songs we were going to listen to and sing to. And my selection was always the Army song, the over hill, over dale, me over dusty trail as the caissons go rolling along. That was my suggestion all the time. She would always pick me at the end, because we would all get up and we would start marching all around the school, inside the school, through the desks and everywhere else, singing and yelling, and we knew the words to that song. That was our favorite thing. And that's the way we would end our music lessons, our cultural music lessons on Thursdays.
Why did you pick that song, do you know?
I don't know, I just loved the marching.
We knew all the military songs, the Marines, and I don't know why. But we did, and then we also learned the Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and a lot of the old songs like that we learned. And, you know,
It must have been in the music book, so.
they were.
Yeah, we had the music books.
The little red music book?
Yeah.
That one? Yeah, the little red music books, right?
So anyway, and you asked me why I picked that. I don't know, but something was in my chart, because years later, I married a man who was in World War II. He was in the Korean War, and he actually was at Fort Benning training soldiers in firearms training at Fort Benning. So he was like in 3 different things for Vietnam, that's right. And who would think? And he was in the Army. He was a decorated Army veteran, very decorated. So I think that was in my chart. That's why I picked up that military. Yeah, and that's why I marched to it. You know. Yes, thank you.
How are we doing on time, Madam Sabana?
I don't know what time it is.
Well, now we're at 16 minutes.
It's 2:18, okay.
We have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about Costello. Do you have any stories about Costello?
Mickey Costello, the sheriff.
Mickey Costello, yeah.
Oh, let's turn it
Okay,
over
we
to
have 12 minutes to share our Costello story.
Okay.
Emma has a lot. Law enforcement.
I love Mickey. Mickey was something else. Mickey was great. But I would pull some stuff on him all the time that I look back and I think, why did I do that? Why did I do that? And then to remember that I went into law enforcement myself later on in my life. Why was I doing that? But I was.
So explain who he was for
He
those of us who don't know.
was our marshal.
Oh.
He was our marshal, town marshal here. And he was a small man, and he would love to dance, and he would love to drink and enjoy all of us. You know, every time we had anything going on in town, there was Mickey. He was part of the group. And one night I was sitting next to him, and I methodically pulled every bullet off of his belt, off of his gun belt. And I had a whole handful of bullets, and Mickey's just singing and having a good old time, not noticing that I was still all of these bullets. And then I had them in my hand, and what do I do with them? So I went and placed them inside the patrol car on the seat. At some point, he was going to find them. And I understand that a lot of the of our boys would do the same thing. They would take the hubcaps off and put little stones, little pebbles in the hubcaps so they could hear when Mickey was coming and doing his patrol. And we actually had a curfew at that time. Was it 10 o'clock?
9 o'clock. We had a curfew there in front of the depot. It was 9 o'clock.
We had a big siren there in the
At 9 o'clock.
Yeah, is it 9
The siren
o'clock?
was for fire
9 o'clock?
Right.
and for curfew.
Yeah.
And did you ever shimmy that up that pole and ring it? I
Yeah.
bet you did.
So Mickey Costello he always had really had a tan shirt and tan pants. I have a really neat picture of him. I don't know if the museum has that or not, but him beside a patrol car. He was a great guy. He really was.
I've got one more little story on Mickey that I just love dearly, and that was when the town was just completely overridden by cats. We had so many cats, feral cats, lots of them. And everybody was complaining about the cats, so Mickey managed to get my Uncle Joe Rivera and my dad to help him start gathering cats. And they would put them in burlap sacks. And they finally had about 3 or 4 burlap sacks going, and he said, okay, let's go get rid of them. So they went up to the dump. Mickey and Dad and Uncle Joe and about 6 or 7 burlap cat bags. And he said, okay, everybody, you 2 guys over here, you go here, and as soon as you open them up, I'm going to shoot them. Oh my God, you know, imagine shooting the cats. So they did, and Mickey says, okay, cut them loose. And Dad and Uncle Joe opened up all of these burlap sacks, and here come all these cats out of there, and they're mad as can be because they've been in the burlap sack, right? Mickey is still doing this number. There goes his gun over there. The cats were back in Patagonia. They all got back. Thank God.
And his bullets are probably still in the seat.
Oh, God.
I thought Mickey started fire at the cemetery.
Oh, God.
That's a good story.
That's a great
Did you-
story. All I know is that he was gonna clean up the cemetery, right? Because it was just full of debris. Not realizing that the majority of those crosses up there are made out of wood
Yeah.
with the names and everything on there. So, but anyway, Mickey got rid of the debris, burned the cemetery down along with the crosses, and so to this day, there are still a lot of unmarked graves. If you go to find a grave, you'll see a lot of the unknown graves. But anyway, yeah, Mickey did that. One thing about Mickey is I learned to drive at 14. I had a boyfriend, he had a car, and he taught me how to drive. And it was an old Ford car, and when I turned 16, I was 15 and 7 months, I was going for my driver's for my permit. And Mickey saw me and goes, oh, you're getting your license renewed, huh? And I said, no, Mickey, I'm actually getting my permit. And I had been driving 2 years before. But I wasn't the only one. A lot of the kids were driving. So I'm sure you were driving at 8. I drove the tractor.
Patrol car.
And actually, back in the day when Daddy was a marshal, after he was the town marshal, he got into the county and he was the deputy sheriff. And they used to, the county did not provide the vehicle for the deputies at the time, so Daddy had an Oldsmobile. I don't remember what year. And I decided it was a pretty good hot rod, so I challenged somebody to hot rod with me in competition on the straightaway out there by where Daddy Cantu lives now, down that straight there. And I won with Daddy's patrol car. Brought it back and parked it, and I don't think Daddy ever knew I had taken it. I don't know where he was and how come he didn't know, but yeah, we were bad kids back in the day.
Is Mickey, isn't there somebody called Costello Way?
Costello Drive, yeah.
Is that named after Mickey?
Yeah.
Yes,
After Mickey. That's a notorious section of Patagonia.
I know where he lived was where, Patty and Carmen Marquezine lived, right?
No, next door.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any more questions?
So, we know about Mickey a little bit, but Costello Lane, that must have been named for his family. So what about the Costello family?
He didn't have a family
Didn't
then.
have my
Mother, just
There's a Costello that was
Just for
a,
Mickey.
there was a Costello that's listed as a custodian at the school. And so I'm guessing that Mickey was related, but that was probably Mickey's mother, but I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Is
My
that correct?
mom- My
Yeah.
mom didn't know.
Oh,
Yep,
But the street was named for Mickey, right?
probably, more than likely, yes.
I remembered a story my mom said that Mickey worked up at the mine, at the trench mine. I'm not sure exactly what his job was, but I think it had to do with sharpening the tools that they used to dig into the rock. And he was a sharpener or something or other. But he came from Tombstone with his family. And he lived in Harshaw, and he had daughters that were my mother's age. So I do recall that he did have a family. And his mother lived here in town, and I think she was she a truant officer?
Could be.
I think she was a truant officer. She would make sure kids got to school, and if you didn't work there, she'd go find and see, make sure that you really were sick in bed. My dad got caught up in something like that. He played hooky one day, and the next thing you know, is that here she was. And quickly he got into bed and was sick. Oh gosh, he was sick. So anyway, T did have a family. I think at some point, the family left, the daughters left, the
His
wife
daughter
left,
lives in,
and the
his
mother
daughter
stayed.
lived in Sierra Vista.
She's Sierra Vista?
Because Mickey used to go he used to, up at Mays, his girlfriend was, Ellen May? Vivian May was his girlfriend.
Oh.
So he used to go up there all the time. And his daughter lived in Sierra Vista. And as I was an optician in Sierra Vista, one time, the son-in-law came after Mickey had died, and he said, I want you to have this. And he gave me the docket books from Crittenden. The docket books I was
Oh,
talking
the ones that you
about,
talked
that
about.
talks about all of Patagonia.
Uh-huh.
And it was his son-in-law came to me in Sierra Vista, and they lived in Sierra Vista, and Mickey wanted me to have that.
That's
That
great.
he had got from up there. So
Oh, thank you, thank you. I know, like I said, I know his mother was right here. Should I tell the story about George?
Yes. That's funny. We have time for one last story.
Okay.
Okay.
This is another Mickey story. His mother passed away, and of course Mickey was very distraught over that. And he decided he wanted to go to Nogales to the Wonder Bar and maybe just have a few. But he knew he had too many, he was going to have a problem getting back in the patrol car. So he decided that my cousin George Rivera would be the one to go with him. And he was probably 18, 19 years old or something like that, maybe 20 at the most. And he wanted, he wanted him to go with and be his sidekick for the evening, because he knew that he needed a driver, a designated driver to get back. And George